Well, welcome to the Expats Portugal webinar for the 22nd of May 2025, tax filing in Portugal, what you need to know, expert insights into the challenges of the tax season. Yes, it's upon us, and common issues faced by those living and working in Portugal. Tax time, everybody. And Pedro Franco from EI from A is here. I was talking to him about AI before the show. Maybe we shouldn't go there right now. We've got enough on our plate talking about the tax system and how to cope well with it with his professional help. Good evening to you, Pedro. How are you? Tudo bem?
Good evening. Hello. Boa noite to all. We are very busy right now. We are right in the middle of our tax season, which started in April 1st, and it will go until June 30. And then we have also, of course, extensions. But this is the most busy time of the year.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And the government granted a little bit of a technological extension, did they not, because of the outage and technical difficulties? Is that right? Or is that over now? Is that behind us?
Yeah, that's behind us. That was to other reporting obligations, not related to the personal income tax.
Okay.
But so we have until June 30. We are still very ahead of the due date. So
Yes.
anything
But I'm
can be done.
guessing with all people around the world and according to human nature, people do tend to leave it to the last minute, however much you ask them to get a move on and file early.
Well, let's hope not, because
Right.
it will mean overnight work in
Yes,
the last
indeed.
week. And yeah, let's try to also, as you will see in this webinar today, it's very important to think with some anticipation and to
Yes.
discuss issues with some anticipation.
Yeah, well, we've got some questions along those lines from people who can't make it tonight. Premium members can file questions if they're not able to make it on the evening, and I'll put some of those to you, but not until you've shared a presentation with us. So over to you with your presentation this evening. And I
Okay.
think you're joining us live from Porto this evening.
Yes, we are in Porto.
And how is it? Does it feel like spring up there now, Pedro?
Yes, it does. So today we had something like 25 degrees.
Excellent.
It's my favorite. So even though I'm from near Lisbon, I like living and working in Porto because the temperature is more, it's not so severe, not so hot, and not so cold,
Yeah,
especially not so hot. So yeah, in the summer we get 29, 28, and
very
so
nice.
now we
Very
are
nice.
25. It's perfect for
Must
me.
be lovely by the river there.
It
Fantastic.
is,
Okay,
it
well,
is.
thank you
I
for
had
that.
lunch by the river today,
Did
so I'm
you? Lucky man. Thank you for
very
that.
fortunate.
Thank you for that weather report and setting the scene for us up there in the north. Fantastic. Well, over to you.
So we are now in our tax filing season. As you know, our tax year in Portugal is the calendar year, and there are many countries where this does not happen, such as the UK or South Africa, Australia. And then there are many countries that are just like ourselves, so like the US, for example, or Canada. Um, and we are going to discuss some things. So, general, we are going to review the personal income tax in Portugal, just the basics, because we don't want to go very deep on that, and to learn about the filing issues that we will encounter and that we should address when we want to take care of this reporting obligation. We will be answering questions like, do I have to file taxes, and should I file first in Portugal or in my other country, and questions like that. So we will cover, for example, the first year of tax residency and the taxation for tax residents, but also for non-tax residents, because many folks have some income or some real estate in Portugal. They might have some income, and they might have to submit a tax return in Portugal as a non-tax resident. So we will go through the tax reporting obligations. And finally, we will have some questions and answers. So feel free to pop in and put your questions. I will try to answer those.
Thank you. I'll
So,
keep an eye on that as well.
okay. So the first year is always the most special year because everything is new and we have to understand one of the things that many people are questioning about is when do I become tax resident and what happens? So let's see here a simple example. If I become a tax resident in October 2024, I have 2 months, I have 3 months of tax residency in Portugal that I have to report. So in Portugal, we have a split year tax return. We are just resident from that moment onwards, and we have to report any income that we have received in those dates, and then going forward. This is the normal case, and of course, it is very important to understand when do you become tax resident. That's a very different question. I'm not going to go very deep on that, but it is the moment that when you link your NIF to your Portuguese address. You can find that date on your Portal das Finanças, okay? But then there is the case that that date is not technically correct because you might have come to Portugal earlier, you might have triggered tax residency earlier. So it's always important to assess that issue or that concern with a specialized advisor. So regarding the one example for Portugal and for example a country where we have a tax year different from the calendar year. This can be UK, but it could be as I told, South Africa or Australia or many other countries. So as you can see, the tax year in the UK is from April 6 to April 5. And we are only concerned in Portugal for 2024 on this little bit here, which is the months from October till December. So we will need this tax return and all the information regarding income derived by a UK source to file taxes in Portugal. However, we have a problem here because we don't know when we will get this information from the UK or from another country that has this type of tax year. So in Portugal, we have until June 30 to file the tax return. So we have two options, or we tell our clients to request their CPAs or whomever is filing for them to try to do it as soon as possible, right after year end. So in April 6, April 7, and then we have enough time to receive this information, and we can report these 3 months of the Portuguese tax year. Or we can file for an extension, and this gives us the rights to file until December 31 in Portugal of 2025. So we have more than enough time to deal with this. However, there are some requirements. There are some requirements to do this, as I will explain later. So this was the first year, and now we have. By the way, we have a normal year where we have 2 tax returns from the UK. So this is also a question that concerns many of our clients, is how do we report income having 2 tax returns that are different from the Portuguese one. And this is how we do it. We have the 2023 UK tax return, which goes from April to April, and the 2024 tax return. So we are going to work with information from both tax returns. So this one we have already. So when we make contacts with the clients in January or February, the first tax return has long been submitted in principle. At least I think until January 31 is the online due date for UK taxpayers. And then we have to wait for the second tax return, which is the 2024, from April 6 to April 5, 2025. So we will take this information out of the tax return to have a complete year of a fiscal Portuguese year to file. And so the steps are like this. So if our tax return 2024 from the UK is not ready, we just submit an extension request. We have to submit this extension request until June 30. So we are changing the deadline until December 31. And for this, there is one requirement. So we must have foreign tax credits to claim. And we have to specify those in our extension request. So it's just not enough to say, I have income from the UK, I have to file an extension request, and that's it. No, I need to fill in which type of income do you have, and on which you are expecting to pay taxes in the UK, which we will be using going forward to offset the Portuguese taxes, okay? So this requires some information. It's not something that we do instantly. We need to gather this information and submit this request. This allows us to then file our tax return normally until December without any penalties for the taxpayer. The following step is, once we are going to file, so we are going to combine the income from part of the 2023 tax return with the 2024 tax return. We are also going to merge the tax paid, to consolidate the tax paid from both tax returns. We can make a proportionality, or we can calculate the effective tax rate if it's a special tax rate for a certain type of income. But in most cases, we do a proportionality. And now different examples. So this is an example from a tax year just like ours from the US. So this is much simpler. We have a normal tax return in the US. We have to wait for it as well. Due date in the US is April 15, but Americans can also, or the taxpayer can also file for an extension in the US. So, however, I brought this case because the US is a special case. I'm sorry, I have a mistake here. It's not UK, it's US. The US is a special case. And why is this? Because the US does not follow the tax treaty for their citizens. Okay? So we have a tax treaty in place with all countries, most of the countries. But the US has what we call a savings clause, which is a rule that says that the government can tax any citizen regardless of the tax treaty. And this means that we may have to file first in the US or first in Portugal, or the other way around. We may have to file first in Portugal and then file in the US and claim the foreign tax credit in the US. So the fix to eliminate double taxation can be in either side, depending on the income streams. So that's why I have step number one and number two, which is we have to evaluate the various type of income that the taxpayer has, and to coordinate with the US CPA in order to submit and to decide on the credit of taxes paid abroad. Okay. It's also possible so many people already filed in the US, and then we file in Portugal. And if we find out that there is a fix that can only be made in the US, it is possible to submit an amendment return in the US. So that is also possible. Of course, you will be facing an extra cost from the CPA because you will have to submit again or to amend the tax return. And as I told, you may need to apply for an extension until June 15 or October 15 in the US. And so we have a lot of flexibility both in the US side or in Portugal side to file whenever we want to file. So it can be in June, July, August, September, October, it doesn't matter. We just remember that we have the rule that we must have taxes to claim as a tax credit in the other state to be able to submit an extension request in Portugal. So regarding payments, this is a different topic. I just decided to bring this up. So in Portugal, usually people that have income from other countries, they only have to pay taxes once, which is in August 31. This is the due date to pay your taxes. So, and many people ask, but I'm doing advance payments in my country. Can I use these in Portugal? No, you cannot use them in Portugal. So it will be interesting to discuss with your CPA in your other country if you can reduce these advance payments, if it makes sense to reduce these advance payments in cases where you will be filing first in Portugal and after in the US, because you will not be using so much of your advance payments. So it's more a financial question, more a treasury management issue than a tax issue.
Can I just to go back to that last slide, Pedro, that should say US, shouldn't it, at the top, income from US?
I'm sorry?
The heading of that page should say income from US.
Yes, I've mentioned that.
Just wanted to repeat that for everybody,
yes.
just so that they
so
know.
this slide is regarding the US taxation. Yeah.
Yep, great.
So regarding the tax residents, let's go over a quick review on taxation in Portugal. So this is it's important also to review how your income streams will be taxed in Portugal. So we have taxation on global income. So if you are resident in Portugal, we have the rule of global income. And then our income might be subject to general progressive rates, or it can be subject to special rates. When your income is subject to special rates, it's treated separately. So it does not compound, it does not aggregate with your income subject to general progressive rates. So it does not trigger higher tax rates on that income, which is good. This is an advantage. Oh, sorry, this is in Portuguese, but you must start learning Portuguese since you are
It's a free lesson.
joining our country if you want, in order to get citizenship. So this is the taxable income, the first column. The values are in euros, obviously. As you can see, we have, unlike other countries, we have many brackets. So there is too much progression, I would say, in our tax rates, which is a little bit not a good incentive for people who want to work more and earn more money, because you are always climbing up the ladder of the tax rate. This is a marginal tax rate, by the way. So not all your income is taxed at the tax rates applicable. So you have the first part is taxed at the lowest, and then it's a marginal tax rate concept. But as you can see, after 83,000, the tax rate is 48%. And then there is an additional, what we call a surtax, 2.5 to income exceeding 80,000, and 5% to income exceeding 250,000. But don't worry, this is only for income that it's subject to progressive rates. And we will see on the following slides that much of your income will not be addressed under this system. So in terms of the special tax rates I was talking about, the autonomous taxation, most investment income, such as dividends or interests, capital gains on equities, on funds or bonds, and rental income when the property is a commercial property. It's taxed at 28%. Rental income from houses, so if you own a house in Portugal which you rent, it pays 25%. And there is a very big reduction on rental income tax if you rent on the long-term basis. So for example, if you sign a contract with a tenant of 5 years, the applicable tax rate will go down to 15%. So it's a 10 points, percentual points reduction in the tax rate. So there is an incentive for long-term rental for obvious reasons to make available more houses for people. You can always choose the general progressive rates. So if your income is very low, your passive income is very low, and you don't have any other income, you can choose the progressive rates, and you may end up paying 13% or 16%. So this is always a simulation that we do when we are filing taxes. And then there is this horrible tax rate, which is 35%, which is for those folks that have income from what we call blacklisted countries. There is a list of tax havens that is published. And for example, Hong Kong is still a tax haven, which doesn't make much sense because we have interchange of information between the tax authorities in Hong Kong and Portugal, and so there is a tax treaty in place, but it's still in this list. So this list is very old, and they never update it. So it's from 2004, so it's more than 20 years old. And this type of income pays 35% in Portugal, so it's quite a punishment. As for non-tax residents, let's look at the taxation. So most of your income in Portugal as a non-resident will be assessed at the 25% tax rate. So whether it is job income or business is self-employed or as a contractor working in Portugal, rental income, once again for houses, and pension income, which is not likely in this webinar today. We also have then a 28% for commercial rental income. So it's just the same, quite the same as for the tax residents, and for capital gains on financial assets. So if it's paid by an entity resident in Portugal, or if the property, if the building is located in Portugal, this is when we consider that it's income from Portuguese source, or if you are registered for your activity in Portugal. One thing that I didn't mention is that on capital gains, there is also a very good reduction that went into force last year, which is for long-term capital gains. So if you have equities that you are holding, if you hold for more than 2 years, 5 or 8 years, the tax rate comes down from 28% to 25, 23, and 19%, which is much better. One thing that's very important to understand, this is not, what I'm going to say is not for non-residents, it's for residents. Capital gains are typically only taxable in your residency country. So it's very important that this is off topic regarding the filing of taxes now. It's more to bring up the issue that when you leave your country, it's important to take some measures. For example, you should declare yourself non-resident for tax purposes or non-tax resident in the country that you are living, so that when you receive this type of income, for example, capital gains, if you have a brokerage account in that country, there should be no withholding tax on the source. So you should only pay taxes on your residency country. And then the US, different situation, but that's only the US. Regarding property, this has changed in the last couple of years. So when you own property and you will dispose of your property in Portugal, even if you are a non-tax resident, you will always have to go under the progressive rates, okay? But only 50% of the gain is taxed in Portugal. However, when we file, we must report income that the taxpayer has, for example, job income or self-employed income or pension income, just for the purpose of determining what is the tax bracket applicable to that person. So it will trigger a higher tax rate, but it will only tax the gain of the property, okay? So it has an effect on progression. Now, in terms of obligations, and now we are getting to our personal income tax return. So we will cover this as tax residents and as non-tax residents. So as I explained, between April and end of June, we have to submit our personal income tax. By the way, this reminds me that you must have already your password in your possession. So we cannot do anything without a password in the Finanças website. So we cannot submit taxes manually in paper. And it's a terrible thing that we cannot request a password as we could in the past. We cannot go to the tax office and say, look, I'm desperate, just give me a password because I need one. So in the past, they were doing this. They were giving passwords to taxpayers who, by any reason, had lost their passwords. But now they make you register in the website. They will send your passwords to your home, and you will have to wait for it, and you will have to pray that the post office does not lose the letter.
Was that done for security purposes to make it a little bit more difficult?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess it was. I don't know the reason objectively, but I think they should be more flexible for when there is a deadline, and if a person is a non-resident, there should be some exceptions, I guess. So make sure you have this password issue well resolved. If you are a non-tax resident, and if you have a NIF, for sure there is a tax representative. So the tax representative is the person who will have access to the password. Okay. So we have the until June to either submit the personal income tax return or submit the extension requests for those situations where your tax return is not ready by any reason and you need to claim a foreign tax credit in the other states. Tax residents. This slide is we are exempt from filing annual tax return in certain very special conditions, but I guess that this only applies to people that are only in Portugal and don't have anything outside of Portugal. So, for example, if you just have a bank account in a financial institution located outside of Portugal, that's enough for you to have to file a tax return just to report that bank account number. So sometimes we have to file even just for reporting reasons. Even if we don't have any income, but we have a bank account somewhere or a brokerage account in a financial institution outside of Portugal, we have to file a tax return. And why is that? Well, we have an expiry date where the tax authorities can collect taxes. They can go back, they can roll back 4 years, and they can audit our tax returns. But if it is related to an account that we have in a financial institution that we did not report in the right period, this rollback period can go up to 12 years. So you don't want that. Okay, so
Wow.
if you were concealing something in a financial institution, or by mistake, or by because you just forgot it and you did not file this account, then your period is automatically extended for 12 years of expiry date for the rights of the tax authorities to collect any taxes in the years that have gone by already. So if you have any income from foreign source, even if it's 10 euros, you have to file, because it's not under the rules for the Portuguese source income. And it was not subject to any withholding taxes. It was not reported anywhere, so the tax authorities don't know about it. So they claim that we must tell them that we have this income. Also, we have, probably when you log into your website, you see something that is called automatic IRS, automatic filing. Well, this is only for folks that have employment income in Portugal, so not foreign. You cannot have a bank account outside of Portugal. So you can either have employment income or pension income from Portugal, or if you have some self-employment income that is taxed under the simplified regime, and it has to be an activity like you are a doctor or a psychologist or an economist. So it cannot be a business, like, for example, a short-term rental or a restaurant, which is what we call a business and not a professional activity. And so it's for very few situations. Yeah, well, many Portuguese people that have only income in Portugal, this is applicable, but not for our typical clients. They will not have this benefit. So what about the non-tax residents? The non-tax residents have to submit in certain situations. So the rule is when you have income from Portuguese source, okay? But not all types of income. So if you have, for example, professional income in Portugal, and it was not subject to withholding tax rates. Let me explain. For example, if you have an activity, you can have a professional activity registered in Portugal, but you can be non-tax resident. However, if you provide your activity to a private person without a business, that person will not withhold any taxes. So in those cases, you have to file a tax return. But if you are providing a service to a company, for example, and the company knows that you are not resident, the company must withhold taxes at the 25% tax rate. And that is a final tax. That's what we call a final withholding tax rate. So this qualifies for the submission of a tax return in Portugal. Or if you have business income that is linked to a permanent establishment located in Portugal. One example, I'm a French person and I have bought a property in Portugal. I'm not here, I'm not tax resident, but I'm doing some short-term rental, some alojamento local, some AL with this property, which is the case for many, many people. They are just investors who buy a property and they will need to file taxes in Portugal because it's professional income that is linked to a property located in Portugal. Also, if you have capital gains for shares of a Portuguese company, so a company registered in Portugal, you invested in a Portuguese company, you are selling the shares to someone, you have to file taxes in Portugal. Also, if you have a company that it's not in Portugal, so you can have a company, an LLC in the US, for example, but this company has basically a property in Portugal. So this is also very common. I have a company, the company owns my house in the Algarve or Cascais. So if I sell this company, it's like I'm selling the property. So I have to file taxes in Portugal in this case. Also, if I sell a trust, fiduciary structure, which is a trust, if that trust has at least 50% of its value constituted by a property located in Portugal. So these are very specific cases where a non-tax resident needs to file taxes in Portugal. So it's always related with shares of a Portuguese company, a building located in Portugal, or if I provide services to someone that is not a company. So it ends up being very simple, 3 situations. So I will also like to talk a little bit about the tax treaties that we have with most countries. So I have ended up my formal presentation, but I would just like to add some insights about the tax treaties, which it's a big concern to many people, is if it's this type of income taxable in Portugal or not. Well, being a resident in Portugal, because of the rule of the global income, it's your first checkpoint of taxation. So the answer is yes, we will always have to pay taxes in Portugal regarding our worldwide income. And then we go to the tax treaty, and the tax treaty will say if the income derived from another source, whether it be the UK or the US or France or whatever, it will say if that country has the right or not to tax also that income. Okay. In many cases, the source country does not have the right. I will give a quick example. If you have pensions from the UK, pensions are only taxable in your residency country. I'm talking about private pensions, not public pensions. So you must tell HMRC that, look, I'm in Portugal. I will receive my pension by full, 100%, without any withholding taxes. Why? Because it's what the tax treaty says. And to do that, I will have to do some formalities. Okay, and that we can help you with that. But this is the basic principle. And if the tax treaty does not allow the source state to tax, what happens is that we cannot. So if you, by mistake, you pay taxes on your pension in the UK, you will not be able to claim in Portugal a foreign tax credit for that for those taxes that you paid in the UK. So this is highly inefficient. So this is why everything must be in the right place, and you must tell the other states that you are not tax resident anymore. And then we have the US, which is an exception. But most countries
so far, has it? The how you have to continue to file, and we always used to say in alignment with Eritrea and North Korea. I don't think it's so much the case with Eritrea, but I still think with North Korea, right?
I did not follow your question, Carl.
We used to say that the only places where you have to file are the US.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Korea.
Eritrea and North Korea, yeah.
I'm not. I don't even think Eritrea are that strict anymore.
I'm
Uh,
not sure if China is also like that. So,
oh, okay, right. So
yeah,
things have changed slightly, but it
yeah, I
hasn't
think
changed that you have to file in the US. That's for sure.
that's for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you renounce your citizenship. So,
Yes, yeah, which is quite the process, and perhaps not somewhere we should go tonight. That's a whole other webinar,
yeah.
right there. Is there anything else you want to say before we get into some questions, Pedro?
I think this was the most important issues. There is too much information, but I think this was the basic principles that I would like to convey tonight to people.
Well, thank you. You've done a great job, and necessarily so. It is a complex matter. There's no getting away from that, is there? It's a complex business, and that's why people need professional help with this. And thank goodness you're here to help in that way. I will do a few questions to include in the YouTube recording, and we will get to the premium member questions and a chance for premium members who are here to talk to you directly after the recording and the people who couldn't be here from our premium membership to have their questions asked of you as well, and those will be recorded. I will just, for the purposes of YouTube, I'll do some sort of more generalized questions, and then we'll get into the specifics after we conclude with the YouTube stream. D7 visa holder then, and thanks again, Pedro, great job.
Right.
D7 visa holder, still waiting for the IMA appointment. Not unusual there, but 14 months after arriving in Porto. Got the D7 visa appointment performed in December 23, and according to the law, should have been entitled to the NHR status, but the IRS denies this option due not being still resident. I have two questions. Can I demand NHR status after getting the residency status? And should I fill out my Portugal 2024 taxes? So we knew the NHR would rear its head during this discussion. How would you answer that question there?
Okay, so let me understand. When did Jaime arrive in Portugal? In December
Yes, December 23.
23.
Oh, got
But
the appointment then.
then he got the appointment in 2024, I think.
Well, might have to come back to you. Maybe Jane will come back to you, and we'll do that after we've stopped the recording. And
No,
let's
but
do that for you, because then we can go into your more sort of personal situation without that being all over the internet. This is all very complicated, says Denise. No question about that. Complex, complicated. It is easier to do a tax emigration. Is it easier to do a tax emigration from your home country and just have one return to file in Portugal? If yes, then how do you receive income from your home country if this is even possible? Thanks for that question, Denise.
um,
That's like a renunciation, isn't it, effectively?
yes, I think so. Yes, receive income from your home country. Well, I'm not sure if I understand what a tax immigration from your home country is.
Again, we'll come back to you, Denise, and we'll answer that
Okay.
personally. Did Pedro just say, Laronda is asking, that a fiscal representative is necessary? Is that in all cases for non-residents, or only if you're a non-resident who will be liable to Portugal for taxes?
It should be for all cases. So when you request a NIF, you have to appoint a fiscal representative if your address is outside of Portugal.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, otherwise you would use your own, wouldn't you, if you had a Portuguese address? Thank you for that. And we'll come back to, oh, well, actually, no, we'll stay with NIF numbers now. As part of my application, this is Denise, for Portuguese nationality, I had to open a bank account and get a NIF. The account maintains a minimal amount of 200 euros to keep it open. No income is deposited. Do I have to file a return? That's a really interesting question, isn't it? A bank account with a few hundred euros in it. Do you have to file a return based on that?
No, no, it doesn't. So if the account does not generate any income,
Good.
but even if it did generate any income, like for example, if you had a term deposit, it would be taxed under the one of those final withholding taxes,
Yep.
which would relieve you from having to file a tax return in Portugal.
Okay,
You
very good.
you, you don't have to report a Portuguese bank account. So
Okay, It's a good question, though. Thank you very much for that, Denise. Diana's saying, I have to remind myself silently to add in Portugal every time Pedro says IRS. Yes.
Yeah.
Did Portugal sort of copy that? Or is it the same abbreviation in Portuguese?
No, so IRS means Internal Revenue Service, which is the
Yeah.
tax authorities, like the HMRC in the UK, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Whereas IRS means Imposto sobre o Rendimento das Pessoas Singulares. So it
What a happy
means
coincidence.
personal income tax. That's
Oh,
the
okay.
literal translation. So
Very good. A happy coincidence, or an unhappy
good
coincidence.
coincidence, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And finally, then, because I think this is, and we'll come. Don't worry, I'll make sure all your other questions are answered in the chat. But we'll do that after we've concluded this first part of the recording for YouTube. Who should give their NIF when making purchases? This is part of coming to Portugal and being part of the culture. And you're asked at the shops, contribuinte or your NIF number. Is it helpful for tax residents who do not have income in Portugal, only passive income from the US? That's a great question. Maybe you could explain a little bit of the background of that, why people are asked if they want to give their number, if you don't mind, Pedro.
Okay. So first of all, this when we give our NIF this was a measure that was carried out by the government to try to so that business owners would avoid not declaring their whole income, their whole revenues in their businesses. And then they give an incentive to taxpayers, which is a small deduction every time you give your NIF. So you are like the cop, the policeman of the businesses when you request the invoice with your NIF.
And they are obliged to ask you, aren't they, in some places?
They are obliged, by law, they are obliged to ask you. So should you or should you not? Well, first of all, you have to see what type of income do you have. But very simply, if you have income that is taxable under the progressive rates in Portugal, as I have shown in my slide back there, then you would take advantage of these deductions.
Okay.
Otherwise, you will not. So if you are taxed with a special tax rate, you are not going to be able to deduct any personal expenses.
Okay, very good. Very good.
And another quick answer. Health expense, so assuming, yes, you have any job income in your source country, so it doesn't have to be in Portugal, it can be in your source country, any job income and pension income, and you are going to, okay, I will give my NIF to have some deductions. So health expenses, yes, absolutely, all of them. Educational expenses as well. Rent, it is automatic. If your contract should be registered with the tax authorities, and this is automatic. You don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have other expenses, okay? Those other expenses, well, if you give your NIF up to an amount of 1,000 euros per taxpayer, you will be maximizing that bucket of expenses. So no need to give more than 1,000 euros of purchases, of small purchases.
In each bracket or total?
For the total of, so for the other expenses, so not educational and not health expenses.
Okay. All right.
For the others, okay?
Wow. Okay. Was it successful, this scheme, to have people declare more?
For sure. So yeah.
Right. Okay. So
So
whoever thought of that is probably a highly regarded person in Portuguese establishment and society. When did that come in, Pedro? Do you remember?
well, it was a lot of years ago. Maybe during the Troika periods when we were seated by the FMI. I'm not sure.
Okay, very interesting. Okay. Thank you very much. Excellent. We'll say goodbye to our YouTube viewers at that point. Thank you very much indeed, Pedro. Great job.